with my special guest today, Lincoln Martin. If you're just tuning in, let me know you're here and where you're tuning in from around the world this morning or maybe this afternoon or even the night. Last week we had guests from all over the world, New Zealand, Australia, Costa Rica, Canada, Mexico, you name it. So if you're just tuning in, let me know you're here and let me know where you're tuning in from. And do me a favor, let's set some goals this morning. Let's make it a goal to get 300 likes. So if you're on Facebook or Twitter, LinkedIn, or YouTube, hit that like button for me and let me know you're here tuning in live. And let me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like button, hit that share button, and let's have a great morning this morning. So, and let's get those questions rolling. Any questions you have at all about hitting, leave it in the comment section, and we'll get to it. Okay, so. And remember, if at any time you can't join us today live in the morning or afternoon, you can always catch this show later. So thanks. We already got people tuning in from Akron, Ohio, Dayton, Ohio. We got someone from Nebraska. Awesome. It's good to see everybody this morning. As you're just getting settled in, I want to introduce to you guys all my special guest today, Lincoln Martin. If you haven't heard of Lincoln, I want to share a few fun facts about him. Lincoln is a former professional baseball player, has scouted for multiple MLB teams, renowned hitting coach across the country, working out of Georgia, and working out of a great facility called Top Tier Sports. And he currently works with mostly softball players. I know he's got some baseball guys too, but mostly softball players. And in the time that I've known him, kind of watching him, I know he's worked with Team USA with some stuff. He's been very active with helping Team Canada. He's worked with several D1 current players, former players, pro players. Lincoln, thanks for joining me this morning.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Awesome. I appreciate it. So, again, if you're just tuning in, let us know where you're tuning in from. I see some Canada, Nebraska, Ohio. It's awesome to have everybody tuning in this morning. Today's episode is brought to you by thehittingvault.com. The Hitting Vault is the internet's #1 online hitting membership, and it's a complete hitting system for both baseball and softball. So, thanks for joining me again today. And Lincoln and I want to provide the most value as possible to everyone today. So, let's dive right into the questions. Okay, so get those questions rolling in today. We've got Keith is tuning in from Atlanta, Georgia already, so he's not too far from you, Lincoln, this morning. Keith Hart tuning in, saying hello. So I'll tell you what.
All right.
First question's rolling in, and I have kind of one for Lincoln. Lincoln, I know you're an ambassador for Blast Motion, and you know it really well. When you have a hitter that first comes to you, it's a high school kid or someone that comes to work with you, it's their very first time and you strap on you put on the blast motion sensor and to evaluate them. What is one of the very first things that you're doing with a hitter when they first come to see you, and you're thinking about, hey, I'm gonna kind of evaluate them a little bit with this blast motion sensor.
Well, when I put the sensor on, first thing I'm trying to really do is just get an objective view of kind of what the swing is actually really doing, more posture, bat angle positioning, just to see if anything stands out that could be a red flag that maybe leads to, troubles that they're having, like a major connection issue, or like I had an out of town kid the other day that had vertical bat angle issues. So usually by that time, I've had a good conversation with them about, you know, their troubles, tendencies, and probably looked at some live video in game. And so from there, just really trying to just get a snapshot of what the swing is actually doing objectively.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think the big thing is that for everybody it's different too. I think coaches or parents and coaches, they get a technology or blast motion sensor, and it's like, they want to change certain things. There's really kind of a big view of it. So hey, I just want to give a few more shout outs. Greg Reeder says missing Lincoln in Vancouver, BC today. Michael's
Oh,
in
yes.
Tuscaloosa. Jared's tuning in from Iowa, so that's awesome. Looks like I've got a question from Santiago. Can a 15-year-old really learn or get better from just a video system or remote lessons, or is a coach really needed? I'll tell you, Santiago. I'll tell you. Here's the difference. Everybody's wired differently. Everybody. I work with some pro guys that send me videos, and I kind of send a video back, and it helps them a lot. And I've done virtual lessons, and the Hitting Vault has helped a lot of people. It just really depends on the person and the kid. For if it's a kid who likes to learn and can watch videos, I noticed that my 17-year-old, he can watch a YouTube video about how to do something, and he does it really well, and he doesn't need the hands-on training. But everybody's a little bit different from that. So I'll just say I think a lot of 15-year-olds can. Just it kind of depends on the kid. Some kids need to be handheld a little bit more. So uh, let's see. Here's the next question for us this morning. It says, with the blast, can each kid buy their own sensor and the coach manage it and see all their data? How about if we have a team iPad? Can I set it up so all the sensors talk to it? Is there a package I can sign up for? I'm not tech savvy. So I'll tell you what. We I am not a Blast Motion sales rep, but I'm gonna guess Lincoln might. You know anything about that in the sense of if a kid buys a sensor, can the coach manage and see all the data? I'm not fully sure how that works. I've only used team
The coach,
packages.
yeah, the coach would have to get a Blast Connect account.
Okay, so yeah, the coach
And
would need to have a Blast Connect account to check into that and see that. But if you buy one for your kid and you know the coach, like you could bring it in. If you're going to work with that coach, you could show them in person or send them video or send them some stuff about it. There's some work around ways from that. So if you're just tuning in, you are watching the Hitting Vault live Q&A, where my special guest Lincoln Martin is helping me answer some questions about hitting this morning or this afternoon if you're on the East Coast like Lincoln. I appreciate everyone tuning in. If you're just tuning in, let me know where you're tuning in from. Hit that like button for us. We're trying to get to 300 likes this morning, so pound that like button. And it's great to see everybody. Matt's tuning in from Northern Arizona. We've got Brian from Grand Island, Nebraska. And someone says checking in from the frozen tundra of Wisconsin. Yikes. So there's a lot of people off the country, New Mexico. And Peter says, yes, they can, as we have 130 players in our Blast Motion app. Again, like if you have a facility with a Blast Connect coach or a facility program, you can manage all those players. Brad's tuning in from Maryland. All right, guys. So what kind of questions do you guys have for us this morning? Coach, uh, I got a question for you, actually. If you were to, I know this is kind of a tough question, but if you were to evaluate high school softball players you come across, if there was a general thing or something that you notice a lot of them have issues with, is there kind of one area that you're like, you know what, I noticed a lot, because when I moved from baseball to softball, I definitely started learning the differences between like how baseball players move generally and softball players, and I definitely saw some differences. Is there anything that you've seen softball wise, like from a 14 to 18-year-old girl? What are some things you see like, oh man, I noticed a lot of hitters have this?
I would I would give you a couple.
I'm
First,
here
I
for
would
that.
okay. First, I would say hands dropping when their body's setting itself up to swing.
Mm,
Not like in the setup, like your hands up, but as their body starts to turn the swing, they have a lot of dropping that happens. One, two is early hip extension.
mm,
Um, a lot of leg drivers, but the order in which they do it for me is incorrect. It happens way too early,
mm-hmm.
and I see timing issues big time with that one.
Yeah, that makes a
And
lot
if
of
I was,
sense.
yeah, and if I was just gonna say, you know, those two like right away are like major. They stand out like most of them. And I'll go one step further is set up and start. Most of them don't spend a lot of time in a good setup, so they don't
Mm,
know what a good setup is, and so their starting place is already bad.
yep. I'll tell you what, I've seen one of the things I've seen in softball I never saw in baseball before was hitters who start with their hands in front of their bodies like this, and
Yeah,
they start with their stand. I'd never seen that before. I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of strange stuff across the board, but when I saw a lot here start, I'm like, what are you doing? Why are we not starting in this position? So there's different ways you can start in a bad position, but you know. Here's the next question for you. It says, my best hitter is my worst in playing efficiency. What would you do? That's a great question. So here, I'll tell you guys this. Last year at Fresno State, one of our best hitters, Skylar Broussard. I really think she would have been, could have been Mountain West Player of the Year if we had actually played a whole season. She led the country in like a bunch of different categories. She had some of the worst blast motion scores you've ever seen. Her connection score was at like 110. She's had a really high vertical bat, but she found a way to adjust even to high pitches. So here's what I'll tell you about data in general. And you're talking about your best hitters, your worst plane efficiency. don't coach your players to the data. Coach your players to be good hitters, and you're going to find out that the best hitters sometimes don't match the best data, and that's okay. The best advice I ever got as a coach when I first got into coaching from my old high school coach was never turn a 400 hitter into a 200 hitter, and I've held that in my head because there are going to be players that just have ugly swings or they don't do things and they're just great hitters. Coach, what do you think about when you have a hitter that's just a really good hitter, but some of their playing score or something is how do you deal with that, or do you talk to them about it at all? How do you deal with that?
Honestly, I don't do anything. What it does for me is kind of tells me how they're creating like their swinging game.
Mm.
Is that they may have a feel to get to the ball that others don't have. So they don't need to be on plane a long time because they have really good feel to get to where they need to get to, you know? And for a hitter like that, is that you more try to understand what makes them successful when the game starts. And they're telling you they may have a really good feel for timing. I bet you that they can repeat an out move and get to a good hitting position pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And I would probably say that in game, whatever their numbers are, repeat over and over and over. And that is more important than a good score, being able to repeat the numbers that they
Mm.
have.
I like that. I like that for sure. Wow, it's so good to see everybody tuning in from all over the place. We got Nick in Oklahoma. We've got Guillermo in New Hampshire. Jeff's in Pasadena, Maryland. Kasha's in Louisiana, and Luke's in Lincoln, Nebraska. Justin's in Kansas City. Bobby in Bakersfield. Scott in Arkansas. Lots of great questions this morning. Uh, Jamie asks, how does blast motion compare to the Garmin Impact? We have a Garmin for my 14-year-old daughter. So I'll start by saying this. I don't know what a Garmin Impact is. But here's what I'll tell you. Uh, when I worked for the Chicago White Sox, in the past, I've used Diamond Kinetics. Nothing against Diamond Kinetics. I like them as a brand. But I will tell you this: in my experience, Blast Motion is better than anything else out there. So I can't speak to the Garmin Impact. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I will tell you the Blast Motion is the best bat sensor I have used out there. So uh, and I'll look into this Garmin Impact. Now you got me curious a little bit. So the workshop is tuning in from Montreal, Canada. A lot of Canadians this morning. That's nice. They must have seen Lincoln Martin's name this morning and tuned in. Annie in Oklahoma City. People from all over. Here we go. Keith Hart says, I'm an ex minor leaguer and I have a 5-year-old. How do you keep from getting bothered when your own child does not listen to something that you know? So, Keith, get used to it. I got 5 kids, and my kids tell me all the time, yeah, Dad, I know, I know. And I'll tell you, my almost 17-year-old, when he was like 9 or 10, we were in the car on the way to a game, and I'm trying to talk to him about hitting for the game. He's like, Dad, I know, I know. I said, do you know that I do this for a living? Like this is what I do. I'm a hitting coach, and he's just like, yeah, Dad, I know, I know. So, Keith, I'll tell you, man, your kids that sometimes just they need to hear it from other people. That's just how. Get used to it for your 5-year-old. That's just how they are sometimes. And I would say my best advice for that is, try to find ways to sit down and talk with them. Hey, buddy, I'm trying to help you, and it just depends on the kid. My youngest kid's really good about it. Some of my older kids, not. It's a tough one. Coach, what do you think? If you come across a kid who or dad, hey, my kid doesn't want to listen to me. Any advice for those dads?
Yeah, be a dad. Find a way to get someone else in the mix that can actually, you know, that they will actually listen to and can build a relationship with, and then maybe through that you can get a little bit more time coaching them.
I like that. Yeah, if you coach a little league team and you got a buddy coaching with you, I always recommend if it's your own kid, finding like an assistant coach or someone that can kind of coach your kid. It usually ends up a little better than that. All right, so I'm gonna pass this question off to Lincoln, and Lincoln, I'm gonna put a shot clock on you because this could be a 2-hour answer, maybe not, maybe a 30-second answer. Matt Martinez asked, baseball swing different than the softball swing at all? So I said you've been in both worlds, you played in both worlds, scouted. You and I, and there's not a ton of guys that have done that. What do you think? And when people talk about the swing difference, is what are some things maybe that you see as different or you approach differently?
Ooh, baseball versus softball. Personally, I don't I don't treat the swing in itself any different. I will say that at the high levels in baseball, they have to cover more planes than softball does. So, body tilt and, you know, things like vertical bat angle and those things come into play and connection a whole lot more just because balls move in areas a lot more. And in softball, the ball up in the zone and understanding, how to keep things high and, work through that ball and not up to it as much.
Yeah.
But far as the actions till you get to your load position, like before the body gets ready to launch, it's the same swing.
Yep. Yeah, I would say I don't teach anything different other than how we approach the ball a little bit. I literally had this conversation yesterday with a D1 softball coach who came from D1 baseball and was asking me some questions about pitches. And I said, in softball, balls kind of go east and west and they go north and
Mm-hmm.
south. But in baseball, there's a lot of different planes that the pitches come into. So there is a little difference there, but for me, again, I think the softball, the ball is up in the zone a lot more. I also think that about 1% of those pitches are strikes, and that's a whole other conversation. But at the rise ball, the low rise to me is the hardest pitch to hit, and all because it's not. It's actually is a strike, and so. But for me, it's the same exact everything Lincoln says. I reiterate that. I just think the approach to it is a little bit different, and I think that you could really, if you want to get to the granular, you could say, hey, you know what? The pitch plane on softball is a little bit less because of the arm slot and the attack angle could be a little bit. But I'm telling you guys right now, and as the hitters get up to the levels, if we're talking about, adjusting attack angles from 1 to 2 degrees and you fixed everything else in their swing, you're doing better than any of us ever doing because
Yeah.
you're doing too much. So
Yes.
let's see here. Jeffrey says, sequence is the biggest issue I've seen. A lot of bad habits start from poor sequence. Yeah, and I would tell you, kind of what Lincoln talked about a little bit in the beginning was the biggest issue I see with young hitters is one, either they have a bad start, but things break down on their way to their launch position. Like whether it's a stride, forward move, that's where everything kind of breaks down. Whether they drop their hands, they put their hands back, they drop their back shoulder, like so they don't even get to a good launch position. So I say this to parents a lot, like especially if you have younger kids. I'll be honest with you, like the teaching instruction is pretty boring at that level because I'm going to spend most of my time just getting you to a good hitting position because that's the whole ball game for most hitters. And if you start poorly and you stride poorly and you can't get to a good launch position, like the rest doesn't really matter a whole lot. I know you kind of touched on this a little bit. Anything you want to add to bad habits starting from a poor sequence?
Now you hit the nail on the head. You got to do square one right because if you don't get to that position on time, then the sequence and barrel release part of the swing is being manipulated, and you're gonna have trouble.
Yep.
And I just see so many hitters who make changes and become way more consistent because they actually get control of how they gather, and so they can know how they actually load and time. And when that happens, it's crazy how their sequence gets in line a lot more.
Yep. Wow, that's awesome. Hey, if you're just tuning in, it is 10:19 a.m. Pacific time. My special guest, Lincoln Martin, on this Hitting Vault question and answer session this morning. We are live, so get your questions in. We've got about 11 minutes left on the shot clock, so get your questions in. Tuning in. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Lots of great people. I see Ron's tuning in from Southeast Kansas. Matt's got a great question here, Matt Williams, and I'll tell you guys what, I'm going to own this fact right here. I am a terrible slapping coach. I know very little about slapping. My guest tomorrow on the Ask Coach Lisle show is Natasha Watley, so she's been a friend of mine for a while. So I'm trying to learn my best from great slappers, and I know a little bit about it, but I'll tell you what, Matt. Here's a question from Matt Williams. Says, what are the common issues you see slappers dealing with when working on swinging away? So I'll start. For me, last year I had the Mountain West freshman of the year, Mac Wilson, who's an absolute stud and a great slapper, and she can power slap and swing away. The issues that I see is that for most slappers, like attack angle and trying to get on top of the ball, like they are just so used to getting on top of it, being down on it, and so for them to start learning how to like move entirely different and put the ball in the air, put the ball on some line drives, is a little bit difficult. I know you've had some slappers come to you and swing away too, or vice versa. What are some things? What are some issues you've seen as slappers who are trying to swing away that you've been working with?
Well, actually, I've been fortunate to have a lot of them from, Skylar Wallace,
Mm,
Brianna Roper, Allie Newland, Zoe Leno, Dallas Goodnight, who still slaps, but she swings away a lot some
yep.
now, and even more. And with those guys, it's just actually trying to get them to understand how to stay kind of behind the front side, because most of them will shift because they're so used to running through
Mm-hmm.
that they think shifting their weight is how they swing. And it's kind of weird for them to learn how to really turn behind their front side. And once they get a feel for that, they do usually have a pretty good job of do a good job and have an idea of keeping their hands up, which is actually a benefit and kind of helps the whole thing. But getting them to feel like what the parts of the swing does, like from the ground up,
Mm.
can be a little challenging. And we just use a lot of movement drills to force them to move, in a certain way. And once those things happen, then the swing usually starts coming together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you've had a lot of you've had a lot of great slappers and swingways. That's a good
Yeah.
group right there for sure, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, this is kind of a tough question, and I'll kind of answer it a little bit. Glenn asked, "What is the best metric for blast motion softball sensor to measure?" And Glenn, my short answer is it's different for everybody. I would say that for me, working with my hitters, I focus a lot on bat speed. I like bat speed. I think you know, I give a thing like, hey, I can swing a wiffle ball bat 120 miles an hour, but if I hit a ball with it, it's not going to go very far. So there's definitely some trade off with there. But for me, attack angle is a really big one with a lot of our hitters. Again, like I see a lot of hitters, amateur hitters, that their attack angle is really flat and have a hard time putting the ball in the air. That's one of them. I like playing connection and rotation, but it's kind of different. What are some metrics, Lincoln, that when you're working with hitters, anything that you kind of tend to lean towards more or like more?
Um, I would say for me, connection consistency and vertical bat angle.
Mm,
Now, you can have a flatter vertical bat angle and still handle the ball, away from you down if you understand how your body works.
yep.
And some hitters can just make up for it because they got that kind of feel. But over the long haul, it can tell me how they're going to cover the plate.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I'm a huge fan of vertical bat angle, and I would tell you, parents, if you're digging into hitting, understanding what that means and what that how that works, especially if you have hitters a little bit of power, understanding that can make a big difference too. So, Joel asks, does the use of a smart coach or radar and blast motion the best way to analyze swing results? I would say it's the most cost effective way. Some of these facilities have hit tracks and TrackMan and all these kind of expensive gadgets. But I'm telling you, if I was a parent and I was wanting to spend the least amount of money possible but have really good results, pocket radar and blast motion, that's kind of the two things that I would use the most. I mean, for me. So uh, let's see. Here's a great question for you, Lincoln. I'll kind of pass this one off to you a little bit. Casey asks, I have a player that does well in lessons or in the cage with her stride. Once she gets in live pitching or game situations, she tends to overstride. Any recommendations on how to help her be more consistent, or any drills that help with that? I mean, I don't know about the drills thing, but maybe you can, Lincoln. I know that you've worked with a lot of players in the cages, and then again, they're cage heroes, and then they struggle in the games. This one specifically, I guess her stride seems to be normal, but in the game tends to overstride. Anything that you come across, any of that, or just in general advice that you might give to parents or kids who do well in their lessons and struggle in real life?
Yeah, I would say hitting in lessons to understand that it's not the game. It's a place to work. But the question you have to find out is what causes the hitter to overstride. There's probably something in the way she moves that doesn't get exposed in the cage, but it's probably there. Most of the hitters over time that I see who have tendencies like a little offline, when they load, usually becomes more offline in the game. And you have to remember that in the game, there's always going to be more because you can't hardly duplicate the motion that comes from the game. So for her, I would probably have some, or him or her, ask conversation like, what happens to you in the game? Why do you think you overstride? And then try your best to create that kind of environment for her, but get her to overstride in the cage to
Mm.
feel what it feels like to overstride and then try to work around that from, inside those parameters.
That's really good. All right, Lincoln, we got a long list of, so we might go a minute or two over here because I'm looking, we got a ton of great questions here. I'm going to try to catch up to them as much as I can. Let's see. And we got a lot of people tuning in too. Amanda Scarborough says, Lincoln is the best. Hi, Lincoln. Hi, Matt. Uh,
What's up?
hello, Amanda. Good to see you. I said a lot of people, Orange, California, a lot of stuff. A lot of shout outs, but I'm going to try to get to you guys. Kevin Hart says, thanks, guys. Truly appreciate the knowledge. So I need to get on the horn with Lincoln. All right. So you got someone maybe coming to visit you top tier soon. So,
Sure.
man, here's a great question right here from Daniel Gershwin. In softball, where do you teach your hitters to focus location wise? For example, look high and inside and adjust from there. That's a good question. I would tell you something I learned from Don Slott and some of the guys that when I first got into coaching hitting. For me, I learned that working in to out is a lot easier than out to in. So, for most of our hitters, I would tell you at the college level, our hitters have a plans based on the count. And again, like I'll say, like, let's say I have a hitter and it's an 0-0 count, and she knows that middle in is her pitch, and she drops bombs on that pitch. She's probably going to only look there, and anything out there, she's not going to. Now, 2 strikes, again, that can change. But for me, with a lot of hitters, we talk a lot about looking in or looking fast and adjusting slow. Like, one thing you can't do is look slow and then adjust fast. Like, you can sit slow. Lincoln, anything you got there, anything you talk about with your hitters in regards to location, somewhere to look first and then adjust, I'd love to hear that too.
Yeah, we hunt pretty much the middle of the plate. And the reason why is that I did one day, I said to the kids, I put balls middle in, and I said, we're going to look middle in. And I would throw a ball literally an inch past middle, and they would take.
Hmm.
And I was like, why did you take that? And they said, well, it's not middle in. I was like, holy cow. So the next group comes in, I do the same thing, the other side, same response. So what happened is that I wanted us to look where we're going to do the most damage, and that is to the middle. Now, if my eyes are middle and the ball's a little bit to the outside, it's still close enough to my eyes. If the ball's a little in, it's still close enough to my eyes to respond. But if my eyes are too far in and the ball's away, it looks way far away. And so try to focus on hunting the middle of the plate, and then it's based from there on the hitter. If the hitter likes to pull, then hunt the middle and work to the pull side. If they like to hit the ball the way, so what? Hunt the middle and work the other way. But get a ball in those zones that you can do something with. And that's been a big thing and really helped. A lot of college hitters who had a hard time trying to sit in or out and they just couldn't do it. And they felt like they were
I
waiting to
like that a lot.
respond, and hunting the middle literally freed them up.
That's great. That's great. Hey, you guys are doing such a great job. If you're just tuning in, this is the Hitting Vault Q&A with my special guest Lincoln Martin, and we've got a ton of questions here. So I'm gonna hold Lincoln in some overtime for a few minutes just to get a few of these because you guys got so many great questions in here. Some more shout outs. Tara Henry from D1 Softball says, Matt Lisle, what camera are you using? And hey, Lincoln. So Tara, you're awesome for one, and I use a Sony M50. It's a Canon EOS camera that I got that makes me look better than I actually am. Let's see here. Next question is a good one. This is Lincoln. I'll let you take this one from Judy. She says, "What is your opinion on finishing the swing with one hand on the bat versus two? Is there advantages or disadvantages? Thanks for helping us understand the swing."
I would say when a hitter is younger, we used to make them finish with two hands. And I just think it forces them to finish like shoulder rotation
Mm,
and some things like that. Because I know hitters sometimes can compensate by being able to let go of the bat.
mm.
And once they learn how to swing correctly, I think the release of the bat happens a little bit later. But I would see a lot of kids get their arms extended early, kind of out of sequence because they could let go. And so we used to really fight for them to keep two hands on the bat. Not, in game, swing how you swing, but that was kind of the logic behind it, is that
Mhm.
I just felt like they would finish things a little bit better.
Yeah, I would say that for a lot of hitters, it helps them to keep their direction too by keeping their two hand two bats. I would say for me, as the kids get older, one hand finish kind of helps you feel like you finish your swing a little bit more. And so I think it is a kind of a progression thing. But I like the idea of, especially the younger hitters, two hands. Just again, you'll see it kind of helps them keep their direction a little more. They kind of pull off less, like Lincoln's kind of saying a little bit. And so that's a good question. Ron asks, is there anything particular in coaching softball or baseball swings that you could see could be beneficial to the other that isn't normally taught or given time to? Ooh, that's a good question. I will say the first thing kind of popped in my head, Ron, is that when I first came to softball, one of the things that I experienced at least was that a lot of softball players who just turn with their shoulders and they kind of they're I think the level swing, or that was kind of a thing, and a lot of level shoulders. So I saw a lot of this, and then hitters couldn't hit low pitches or outside pitches a little bit, and they had this kind of just flat shoulders. So I would say in softball, the thing that I probably do way more than I do in baseball is working on side bend and hip hinge a little bit more, and learning to how to use our shoulders a little bit more. Like I said, I use the term side bend, but shoulder tilt, and learning how to kind of rock the baby a little bit. Where I feel like I saw that more in baseball. I didn't see it as much in softball. Is there anything you see, again, from either softball could benefit baseball or baseball benefit softball? Maybe something that you kind of noticed that was different in your experiences.
I would go back to, I think probably the number one missed thing is hitters understanding how they get themselves ready in the start of their swing. Like, I think Rachel Foden, who went into pro ball, when she came home, had a tweet that said she didn't realize how much time big leaguers or those guys in pro ball spend in the start of their swing, how much time they spend on their setup and start.
Mm,
And she come back and it was a focal point, like, wow, like I had no idea they spend that much time. And I was like, that's awesome, because having worked with some pros, I know for a fact that what they do before they swing matters a whole lot to them, much more than I see these kids. Most kids just want to get to contact and extension.
mm.
But if you can do that part right, then things are going to have a better chance to work. And then other than that, is, I would say, them really understanding, like how to use the lower body. So many times it's pushing to shift the swing a lot.
Mm.
And that you have trouble away, you have trouble with timing and some other things. But I would say those two things mainly.
I like that. I like that a lot. All right, another shout out. We got Amanda Williams, who's I know now she's in your neighborhood. Says hi, guys. Amanda, if you don't know who Amanda is, she's an absolute stud. Former, I'm sure, All American pro softball player. Stud Amanda. Hello. I know you're out in Lincoln's neighborhood. All right, Link. I got two questions that I think are perfect for you here. These so a couple of good ones. Crystal says, what do you say to parents that seem to say it seems like they do the same drills every time in lessons? Mainly this do with pitching, but can somewhat go towards hitting too. So I'm guessing Crystal is a someone who gives lessons. So if you had a parent come to you and say, "Hey, Lincoln, I noticed you guys are doing the same drills every week," what would be your response to that or initial thoughts?
Well, I would say number one, make sure that you have that what you do is necessary. Like in the cage, I don't do anything that's unnecessary.
Hmm.
I don't care if we have to do the same two drills for 6 years. It is what they need. It is how it keeps them on track. And based on what they need, they may not need 5 drills. They only may need 2.
Yep.
And maybe explaining to them that, hey, we're at a place now, these 2 drills literally control a whole lot of other things. So this is why we stay here.
Yeah, I like that. And I would tell you, if it was me, if a parent came to me and I was doing lessons and they asked that, my first question to them would be, "Hey, how much time outside of this one, half hour to an hour a week are they at home practicing this thing?" Because if they only work on this skill or this drill when they're working with me, and then they take the next 6.5 days off, that's probably why we're doing the same drill over and again, because they're not
No
really
doubt.
working on it on their own. So that could be one of the things. Great question here from John. I think this is a good one for you too, Lincoln. It says, "What advice can you give a high school athlete who is getting conflicting and confusing hitting instruction from a high school coach versus what their outside hitting instruction?" And I know for a fact you've dealt with this. I'm at the college level, probably every level. I know you've dealt with this. So I'll say, if you had an athlete come to you and say, "Hey, Lincoln, I love what you're doing with my swing. I love it, but my coach hates it and talking this, and telling me to change this." What advice are you giving these athletes that say, "Hey, Lincoln, what do I do?"
Huh. Yeah, I've done with this in a bunch. Luckily, I don't have to do it much anymore. But I would say this: if there's a chance to create dialogue between you and the coach, do it. Maybe educate him on what it is that you're trying to do, because what you're saying may lead to the same results that is, in a sense, he's trying to get you to. And what he does, and sometimes you have to maybe understand that what he's trying to get you to do may be a drill, and do the drill, but keep the authenticity of your swing when the game starts. And the biggest thing you can do is have success.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell kids all the time, like, "Hey, if you're hitting 400, if you're performing, you're having success, that coach's voice is going to get less and less. They're going to stop. They're going to stop saying stuff. But if you are hitting 190 and you're not hitting well at practice, if I'm on the other side of that spectrum, I'm going to talk to the kid and be like, "Hey, I know you're telling me this stuff's working, but you're telling me I'm seeing something different." So
Right.
let's see. One more question for you guys, and there's so many great questions, you guys, and I appreciate so many of them, and I've gotten so many comments here about Lincoln. Now he's doing so great, blah blah blah. Let's see, there's some love me some Lincoln Martin. So you got a lot of fans tuning in today. That's awesome. Um,
Nice.
let's see here. Oh man, I'm gonna try to pick which one. Which one do I want to go with here for our last question? This could be a good one. I would be curious to see. Matt Martinez asks, "What's the best way to teach body tilt and how it relates to swing playing?" So I think he's referring to, like, again, you talked about some getting to some of those locations. I'll give Lincoln some time to think about. For me, I do a couple different things. I like to use a lot of stuff with PVC pipe, and I have like a mat or a wall that we'll go against, or a net. I mean, it could be anywhere. And I use some tapes with like location, high, medium, low, and I just have them work to those locations with like the PVC pipe. And a tee works too. You can put a ball on the tee and say, "Get to those pitches with just your," that's some of the ways done. There's a drill that Ryan Fuller with the Orioles does called the airplane drill. The hitters actually do it with their arms and do some stuff like that. I really like. Any drills or tips that you would give to hitters who you're trying to get to that low outside pitch, or you're trying to teach some body tilt in the swing. What do you got for us, Lincoln?
Well, I generally do some of the same things, especially when they're younger, because they may not understand how they really are loading. But I think when you start to load well, then sloping in your shoulders and some of those things will start to kind of take care of themselves. I would go back and say a lot of kids never get to enough tilt when they land, like in their hitting position. They're very much upright, so bending over is hard to do. Um, but if you can get them to feel what good posture tilt forward feels like, then understanding that the swing, we use wording like the swing comes around or the swing stays on the side. And so tilting and those things becomes really more natural in your move. But until they get to that place, I would use PVCs or anything that would create like a visual or some kind of feel for them with getting what it feels like to get their body in multiple places.
Oh, that's really good. Hey, if you're just tuning in, you have been watching the Hitting Vaults weekly Q&A with my special guest, Lincoln Martin. You guys had so many great questions this morning. I appreciate it, but we're not going to take up any more time this morning. So thank you for tuning in, everyone. Thanks for letting us know where you're tuning in from. People from all over the country and the world this morning. I want to give a special shout out to my special guest, Lincoln Martin. And Lincoln, I know they can find you at Martin_Lincoln at Twitter, at Top Cheer Sports in Atlanta area. Anyway, if I wanted to learn more about Lincoln or come work with you at your facility, how could I do that?
Shoot me an email.
Shoot you an email. Where do we shoot an email to?
MartinLincoln71 at gmail.com.
MartinLincoln71 at gmail.com. If you're in the Atlanta area or you want to catch up or just learn more about him, again, check him out at Martin_Lincoln. Lincoln, I thought, man, you did a great job today. I'm getting a lot of comments here from everybody saying thank you to you. And Brittany Elaine says, hey, Link, two great hitting guys right there. Love it. Brittany Elaine Lewis. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I think we might have broken our Q&A attendance record today on viewers. So thanks again, Lincoln. Appreciate you. Everybody else, I appreciate you guys tuning in. It's Monday. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Lincoln.